All right, today we're diving into something a little different. We're breaking down a first-hand account, a chilling, true story sent in by a viewer about what his family went through back in Delhi in 1987. Let's get into it.
The person who sent this in started with this exact quote, so yeah, that really sets the stage, doesn't it? This isn't just some campfire story. This is what a family actually lived through.
So, our story kicks off with a totally normal, practical decision. We're going to see how the Majumdar family found what they thought was the perfect place to live, a choice that, well, turned into an absolute nightmare.
Okay, so let's meet the family. You've got the father, Ramesh. He works for the railways, and in 1987 he gets transferred to Delhi. So he decides it's time to move the whole family to the city with him. His wife, their 4-year-old son Sarthak, and their 2-year-old Mansi. Just a totally normal family starting a new chapter.
Ramesh was a practical guy, so when he found this room in a neighborhood called Gandhinagar, it seemed perfect, and for two big reasons. First, the price was a steal, like unbelievably low. And second, it was right around the corner from his sister's house, which was a huge plus. So, he didn't think twice, paid the 2-month advance, and that was that.
But here's where the first major red flag pops up. It came from his own sister. She told him straight up, don't stay there. She said people in the neighborhood whispered about that room, that nobody ever stayed for very long. But for Ramesh, the cheap rent and the great location, it just seemed more important than some local gossip. All right, so they've moved in, and this is where things start to go wrong. That initial hope and excitement of having a new home, yeah, that starts to unravel pretty fast. For the first couple of days, things seemed okay, but almost right away, Sarthak's mom, she just had this feeling. You know that feeling when the air just feels heavy? Something was off. At first, they just figured, hey, it's the stress of moving, a new city, but it was definitely more than that. And then, it wasn't just a feeling anymore. One evening, she's cooking near the doorway, and she sees a shadow move past the curtain. Totally normal, right? She figures it's just her husband, Ramesh, home from work. Except, here's the thing. She gets this weird sense that whoever it was didn't go into their main room, but into this other room right next to theirs, a room that was always locked. And when Ramesh finally gets home for real, he's like, nope, that wasn't me. I just got here. So, who or what was that shadow? Okay, if that wasn't creepy enough, get this. The next day, Sarthak's mom walks into the room and finds her little 2-year-old just sitting on the bed, laughing. But he's laughing at nothing. Just an empty space right in front of him, like he's playing a game with someone she can't see.
And the activity just keeps escalating. Another evening, a knock comes from the window. Now think about this. They are on the 2nd story. That window opens onto a tiny alley. There's no balcony, no ledge, nothing for a person to stand on. It's physically impossible. So she's just standing there, trying to process this impossible knock. And then it gets worse. A growl. A deep, angry growl, coming from right outside that window. That's it. That's the moment this whole thing goes from just being weird to being genuinely terrifying. She grabs her children and just runs. So whatever was in that house wasn't just trying to be noticed anymore. It was getting aggressive. This is where the haunting turns physical. This is where we get to the unseen attacks. Imagine this. Sarthak's mom is in the room making breakfast. Her back is turned for just a second, and suddenly 4-year-old Sarthak is literally thrown from the bed. He lands on the floor and cries out, "Mom, you pushed me!" But she was all the way across the room. Something unseen had just shoved him. As she's rushing over to comfort her son, who is obviously terrified and crying, the threat becomes undeniable. A woman's voice whispers directly into her ear with a clear, horrifying message. Get out of here or I'll kill everyone. I mean, there's no mistaking that. Now all this time, Ramesh, the father, he's been the skeptic. He's thinking his wife is just stressed out, her imagination is running wild. Well, that all changed when he finally had his own encounter. He was alone in the room one evening when he heard that same impossible knock at the window. He looked, and there, floating in the air outside, was a girl. Her eyes were wide, her face was terrifying, and she repeated the exact same threat. Get out of here or I'll kill everyone. And just like that, skepticism gone. Shattered. That one terrifying vision changed everything. Which brings us to the next part of the story. Fleeing the nightmare. The very next morning, a now terrified Ramesh went straight to the landlord.
He didn't even need to discuss it with his wife. He just announced, "We are leaving." Immediately. The debate was over.
But of course, it wasn't that simple. When Ramesh asked for a partial refund of their advance, the landlord refused. Then he made this really bizarre counteroffer, suggesting Ramesh send his family away for a few weeks while he stayed behind with them. But Ramesh didn't care about the money or the strange offer. He agreed to give up the entire month's rent just to get his family out of there safely.
And so, after only 9 terrifying days, the family packed everything, left that room for good, and moved into the safety of their aunt's house down the street. Their ordeal in that house was over.
But the story doesn't quite end there. Because now that they were safe, they needed answers. Why did all of this happen? And that leads us to our final section, the landlord's secret.
After they talked to the neighbors, the whole horrifying history of the room just came spilling out. Turns out the landlord's own 22-year-old daughter had taken her own life in that very room after her parents forbade her from marrying the man she loved. And because they were so consumed by shame, they never performed the proper last rites, leaving her spirit restless and angry. And tragically, they also learned that a previous tenant's young son had died after falling from the roof, a fall that he claimed was the result of a push from an unseen force.
You know, the Majumdar family was lucky. They listened to the whispers, the pushes, and the threats, and they got out. Their story is just this chilling reminder that sometimes the most practical, logical decisions can lead us to the most inexplicable places. And it leaves us with one final unsettling question. If walls could talk, how many would scream?